Hi, good evening. Shavua Tov. I would like to just really echo sentiment, thanking my wonderful hosts. I don't know where they're busy setting everything up, so I can't even thank them. Ruthie and David, are you anywhere? You're busy, of course. Thank you. I'm trying to say thank you. You guys are the best, and you helped me navigate more than, aside from making me feel very much at home, David helped me navigate the intricacies and mysteries of tefillah in a Sephardic shul. My only regret is that I'm leaving now just when I was just starting to get the hang of it. But really a lot of extra words, but it's all good. Okay, so throughout Shabbat, I have been talking about the vibrant conversation that is taking place constantly in the passages within Tanakh. Stories are in dialogue with one another. And I'm going to throw this question out yet again, which is, how do we know, we as close readers of the biblical text, how are we alerted to the fact that certain stories are talking to one another, that dialogue is taking place? Parallels in what? Storylines, themes, language, and we look for those things, and we say, well, if this story has this list of words, and I wouldn't say just any words in common, and in fact, you mentioned I teach at the Pardes Institute. I have these wonderful students there. They always want to please their teacher, and every once in a while, one of them will come running up to me in the Beit Midrash and say, Judy, it's amazing. This story has Vayomer, and that story has Vayomer, right? That's not exactly what I mean. What are we looking for when we're drawing stories together on the basis of shared language? What kind of language? How can we refine that?
Keywords.
What do you mean by keywords?
Words that will change a plot. Words that will change a situation that appear almost unusual.
Okay, good. Unusual, relatively rare words. Okay, Vayomer is not rare at all. But there are certain words that we don't see in every story, yet we see them in these two stories. Words, and maybe also when you said keywords, words that are particularly insistent, those are the kinds of things that draw our attention, and we say, if these stories share those elements, language, themes, it's our responsibility as careful readers to draw those stories together and see what the payoff is by reading them in light of one another, beyond that which we would have seen had we viewed them each only in a vacuum. Okay, what's going on down there? You good? We're busy. Okay.
We're good.
Yeah, okay. The subtitle of my book is Mining and Undermining. Sometimes stories borrow each other's language and themes, not just to echo and interpret and reinforce each other. Sometimes there is a kind of oppositional relationship between stories that borrow each other's language and themes. One story echoes another. What? Louder? Yeah. One story echoes another, not just to expand upon it, but sometimes it will do it, and this is another word I use in my title, in a subversive manner. Okay, now things are getting a little dangerous, right? Do you feel it? Where it'll use the language to sometimes challenge its assumptions and even sometimes to overturn its conclusions. Okay, I'm going to explain, we're going to do this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. We're going to talk this evening, we're going to engage mostly in an act of mining, two stories that echo each other in surprising ways, and if you play your cards right, if you're really an excellent audience, there will be one act of subversion and undermining at the evening's end. One story that's going to challenge the two stories that we've looked at. Twice we have stories of a Kohen that is not Jewish. Okay, and I'm using that word anachronistically because we don't have the term Jewish in the Chumash, but we're going to use that for the sake of simplicity. A non-Jewish Kohen who comes at a pivotal moment in the life of a Jewish patriarch and helps him get over a crisis. Who might I be talking about? Okay. Oh, great, you've got it all. Okay, I'm done. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you. Okay, we've got Avraham and his mysterious Kohen, Melchizedek, Melech, Shalem, Kohen, El Elyo. Okay, and Yitro, who is Kohen Midian. Excellent. Okay. Let us begin. And again, we're going to look, after we compare these two stories, we're going to see what is the significance, first of all, of this model. What is so significant about it that the Torah engages in the story twice? And then after we do that, we're going to see what is the significance then of taking that model and turning it upside down. You with me so far? Let's go. Okay, source number 1 on your page. Okay, everybody have access, visual access to these source materials? Yes? I don't have more. Okay, yeah. Okay. Source number 1. We begin with Abraham with a very familiar passage. ויאמר השם אל אברהם, לך לך מארצך וממולדתך ומבית אביך אל הארץ אשר אראך. Go, לך לך. What's wrong with those words, לך לך? What's troubling about that terminology? What might we say more simply? Lech, go. What's lecha? Why lech lecha? What does that mean?
For your own good.
What?
For your own good.
Perhaps for your own good, and that's the direction that Rashi, lehana'atcha, for your benefit. What else might it mean? Lecha?
To yourself.
Who said that? Speak up. To yourself. Or, hi again. What do you mean to yourself?
Return to
Your own integrity, inner, right? Your sense of self, to that which is uniquely yours. If you leave behind all competing influences, if you leave behind everything that is not true to who you are, that will be a movement toward the lecha within you. Okay, that's the Hasidic way of looking at this. Lecha, go toward yourself. And that action, that motion toward yourself is going to lead you to a relationship with God. You're going to move inward, and by moving inward, that's going to help you move upward toward a relationship with God. We might say that Abraham's last name is going to support this notion of a motion that is putting Abraham at odds with others. He's going to go on a path that is uniquely his, which is going to be a very solitary path. What's Abraham's last name besides Avinu? Ha'ivri, right? And the Midrash, I think, is spot on when it says, Kol ha'olam be'ever echad, and he's on the other side. The world is here, and Abraham is other. Right? He's the person, the iconoclast, the one who stands up for his own personal truth, no matter what the situation, no matter what the perils. He's a person of great integrity. And I would say that is something that's required of Abraham in particular. He's a revolutionary. Right? He's starting something that's new, that's never been done before. And in order to perfect it and to distill this thing, he's going to have to lead a very solitary existence in order to really engage with the ideas. He doesn't have a nation yet. He's got to hold on to this thing till he can pass along the idea to the next generation and the next, until ultimately there will be a nation that will embrace this. But until then, he's got to keep it whole and pure. His action, his motion toward himself, this solitary existence, doesn't end when he leaves behind the people from his birthplace. His whole life is going to be a continuing series of leave-takings. Right? Who else is he going to leave after he leaves behind the people from his homeland? Who's he going to leave after that? What? Lot. Who else? Which one? Yishmael, his son. Who else? Hagar. Who else? Yitzchak. He's going to leave in very significant ways. Who else? Sarah. A couple of times. Right? We basically his whole life he's shedding people. He's moving further and further into himself. This kind of isolation and kind of absolute purity that's necessary to hold on to this idea. However, what turns out, and God is promising him, and here I'll get back to Rashi, and go for your own benefit. There is some hint in this opening passage, when God speaks to Abraham for the first time, that there is some benefit waiting for Abraham. What do we have? After God says, Lech lecha, God then says, Ve'ezcha legoy gadol, va'avarechecha, Va'agadela shemecha v'heye beracha. What word? You said keywords before. What's a keyword? What? Beracha is the key word here. What is a key word in a passage in general? Milah mancha. Great. What's a milah mancha?
A repeated word.
Yeah. Where do you go to school?
We gotta know the answer to that question.
Really? Where do you go to school? What? Good job. Okay. Okay, a word that repeats itself, what seems to be an unusual number of times within a relatively short amount of textual space. A milah mancha, a word that guides us. It gives us a key to unlocking the passage as a whole. And here, clearly, the milah mancha is the word beracha, blessing, that appears here no fewer than 5 times within the space of 3 psukim. God says to Abraham, I'm aware of how difficult my request is here. I'm asking you to leave everything, to move into yourself, to develop an idea and hold it and distill it and pass it along at great personal cost. And if you look at the lives of revolutionaries throughout history, one thing that will stand out is the fact that they are not great family people, usually, right? They have to sacrifice a great deal in order to uphold this revolution. And here we have the same with Abraham. And God's acknowledgement of the difficulty is to say, there's going to be a payoff at some point. There is going to be beracha. You are going to be 5 times blessed. Okay, so that's a beautiful idea, right? It's coming. The blessing is coming. I want you to do this. I know it's hard. The problem with the promise of beracha is that it doesn't seem to actually come to pass. Almost immediately after this 5-fold beracha, what happens? What happens to Abraham? Almost right after this. Right? Go to this wonderful land, and Abraham says, great, I'm in, I'm going. And he gets there and he finds out there's no food. Right? There's ra'av ba'aretz, there's a famine. As a result of the famine, what does he do? He is exiled. He has to go to Mitzrayim, which for some reason seems to always have food where nobody else has food. Right? He goes to Mitzrayim, and then things go from bad to worse. What happens in Mitzrayim? Thank goodness we don't have to study this passage this evening. Right? His sister looks at his wife. He says, oh, you're beautiful. That's a problem. I better say that you're my sister, not my wife. She is taken by Paro. Okay, the story is a very, very difficult story. The end of the story, I would say, is probably the most disturbing piece of it of all, which what happens, Abraham leaves Mitzrayim much wealthier than he entered, right? As a result of this deception, he is given a great amount of gifts by Paro, the king of Egypt. He accepts the gifts. He leaves Mitzrayim kaveh, weighed down with material goods, and he is a wealthy man. Okay, well, we're not going to get into that story, but what I do want to say is that what seems to be happening here is that there is this kind of grand celestial vision at the beginning of Abraham's journey, where God says, Lech lecha, move into yourself, up toward me, follow the stars, your future is bright, you will be mightily blessed. And what he sees in reality is a kind of downward motion that doesn't seem to have a bottom. And things are going from bad to worse. And here we're moving toward our passage and our mysterious Kohen, where what's going to happen is that after he leaves, he's going to come into contact with the Bereshit, the evil empire that is presented in the book of Bereshit. What is that empire? Sodom. How does Abraham end up at Sodom? This is a group that knows its Chumash. Most people don't do this. And I've done kind of a little survey of, unscientific survey of people. When the 14th chapter of the book of Bereshit is being read in any shul, people's eyes glaze over and they completely lose track of what's going on. It's an impossible story. But what goes on in that story? What's the story? We have a series of wars between kings. 4 kings, a set of 4 kings, a set of 5 kings. They have names that are impossible. Like one king is Kedar La Omer, that's one king. There's a whole bunch of other kings. They're fighting. What are they fighting about? We don't really understand. There are these insurgencies and counterinsurgencies. One's up, the other one's down, fighting back and forth. Seems to have absolutely nothing to do with the narrative that we've been following up until then, which is all about Abraham and his journey. Until finally we figure out the relevance. How do we figure out the relevance? Because Lot, who has parted from Abraham and chose to live in Sodom, he's on the Sodom team. Sodom is losing the war, and Lot is taken captive. At that point, a refugee, the Palit, David, the Palit in Aramaic is the Shizava. Okay, I learned that in the Kaddish, Shizava, which is Aramaic for a Palit, for a refugee. So the Shizava comes to.
I'm sorry. Is that a commentary?
That is a.
Shizava,
salvation. It is. Oh, it means it's that you found it in Onkelos.
Salvation.
Refuge, safety.
That's how Onkelos.
Shizava is.
Palit, the Targum is Vishezvei.
Yeah, but he's not metargem kipshuto. He's also exegesis. He's not saying.
Miklat also is saying.
Okay, moving right along. I would like to suggest here that this is probably the lowest that we are going to get, because Abraham is faced now with an impossible choice. This Palit, we'll call him a Palit for simplicity's sake, this refugee comes to Abraham, running up to Abraham, and he says, Abraham, your nephew has been taken captive. What are you going to do about it? What are his options at this moment? What? Ditch. Let's say I never heard of him. I'm walking away, and in which case, what will happen to Lot? He's going to die in captivity. Or what's his other option? He can fight on which team? He will have to align himself with the evil empire. He will have to become an ally of the king of Sodom, in order to fight on their behalf and win the war so that he can save his nephew. Okay, we all know what happens. He chooses the latter option. As a result of his involvement in the war is won and Lot is released from captivity. But in order to do that, I would say this is probably the most difficult compromise that Abraham has to make. Right? The world is intruding. The vicissitudes of life get in the way of this pure concept that he's trying to hold on to. And he has to get involved. He has to respond. And so he aligns himself with this evil king. And now we get to the moment that we've all been waiting for. On your page, Genesis 14. Okay, and the question that I would like you to keep in mind as I read this out loud, is what is wrong with this passage? Something very basic is wrong in this passage. Okay? Vayetze melech Sodom likrato, acharei shuvo mehakot et kedar laomer, etc. Okay? The king of Sodom comes out to greet Abraham after Abraham has helped win the war. What do you think is going to happen next? Don't look. What should the next pasuk say? The king of Sodom went out to greet Abraham after he finished feeding the other people. Next pasuk should say what? What? Vayomer. Who said that? Here, Vayomer is the right answer. Yes. Vayomer what? Vayomer melech Sodom leAvram something. What do you? By the way, what would he say? Thank you. Right? Thank you very much.
What can I do for you?
What can I do for you? What a winning team are we? Perhaps we can keep it up. Something, right? We're tight. We're good. This was a great winning experience, right? But instead of the king of Sodom saying anything, the next verse says, "Umalki tzedek melech shalem hotzi lechem vayayin vehu chohen le'el elyon." Oh, of course, right? What's the problem here? Well, let's go on. Vayivarechehu vayomar, and he blessed him, and he said, "Baruch Avram le'el elyon koneh shamayim va'aretz." Blessed be Abraham to God, the El Elyon, God Most High, the Creator of the heavens and the earth. Uvaruch El Elyon Hashem migen tzarecha biyadecha, and blessed be El Elyon, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. Vayiten lo ma'aser mikol, he gave him a tenth of everything. And then, of course, then the thing that we thought would have happened several psukim earlier, Vayomer melech Sodom el Avram, and then the text continues as if we had not had this rude interruption. Okay? So I think we've answered the question. What's wrong with this passage?
It's out of place.
The sequence is off. If the king of Sodom is coming out to greet Abraham, he should come out, greet him, say something, and then, if we want this other character to come in, let him at least wait until that one is finished. We want to know, what is he doing in the middle of the narrative of the king of Sodom? And I would say even more basic. What's an even more basic question than that?
Where did he come from?
What's he doing here? What is he doing in my story? Who is Melchizedek? We've never heard of him before. We are never going to hear of him again. All of a sudden, he just pops up in this narrative right smack in the middle of a conversation that's supposed to be taking place between the king of Sodom and Abraham. Why is he here? Okay, that is a real question. Any ideas?
Contrast them to.
Great, fantastic. Okay, and another Sephardic Jew made this same comment, and that would be the Or HaChaim. And the Or HaChaim says, in fact, I'm just going to do this in English for the sake of brevity. Or HaChaim lived in the 18th century in Morocco. He says, the reason the text interjected the account of the king of Shalem between the emergence of the king of Sodom and his words to Abraham was to tell the praise of the righteous, how different they are from the evil people. The king of Sodom went out to meet Abraham empty-handed, though he was obligated to greet him with expansive gifts. But the evil king went out empty-handed. In contrast, the righteous Melchizedek, who had no obligation, gave advice and received him with bread and wine. So to truly appreciate the wickedness of the king of Sodom, we have to tell him to wait for a moment. We have to first introduce a good king who's going to do everything right, so that when we then meet the king of Sodom, we can say, wow, we didn't even realize how terrible he is. He is really, really terrible. Okay, yes?
So it says that he was given Maaseh Mikol. We don't really know how much that is.
No.
And also, right afterwards, it says, give me everything and keep whatever you have. So clearly he's empty-handed because he just
Clearly
lost
he's
the war.
what? Clearly he's what?
He's empty-handed,
Empty-handed.
because he just lost the war.
Mm-hmm.
And he requests to have his things. He requests to have his people back and keep everything because I don't have anything left. At least give us my nation so we can start over.
Okay, all right, so you're saying maybe he's not so terrible, maybe he's just poor.
Right, doesn't have anything to give.
Okay.
But also,
Yeah.
we don't know who, like, it's ambiguous by 10 law. who
Yes.
gave who.
It's ambiguous who gave the Maaser
Maaser
to
to
whom. Some would say that the obvious answer, the more likely answer, is what?
Melchizedek.
That what? Because he's a Kohen,
Oh, that
that
Abraham
Abraham would give
gave
him
him.
Maaser. But I actually prefer to read it the other way, that it's Melchizedek, who is the person who's going to be doing all the giving, that he's going to be the one giving the Maaser. But before we get to that, let's try to support Or HaChaim's contention before we move on to what I think is probably a more satisfactory answer. Or HaChaim is telling us that we have to fully appreciate how evil the king of Sodom is. And here, if you look on your page, I have just chosen a couple of examples from the Nevi'im about just how terrible Sodom is. Sodom is a symbol of evil in the Nevi'im in a way that's somewhat different than the symbol that Sodom is in the book of Bereshit. In the book of Bereshit, what is Sodom? What does it symbolize in Bereshit? What's Sodom? What kind of evil? Not exactly. Depravity, right? Sexual depravity. They're the ones who are knocking down the door to violate the strangers in the town. It's terrible sexual behavior. When we get to the Nevi'im, Sodom is a symbol of something else. And if you look on the page, for instance, in Yeshayahu, Shimu Devar Hashem Ketzinei Sodom Ha'azinu Torat Eloheinu Am Amorah Limdu Heitev Dirshu Mishpat Ashru Chamotz. Right? What is Sodom? A symbol of the absence of mishpat. There's no justice. And then we're told in Yechezkel in what way are they lacking in justice? They have, right, Hinei zeh haya avon Sodom, gaon sivat lechem. They have this excess of lechem, of bread, but v'yad aniva evyon lo hechazika. They don't give. They have bread and they don't give bread. Okay, so now let's get back to our scenario. How might this, in fact, as Or HaChaim suggests, present a good contrast with Melchizedek? What's Melchizedek going to do? He's going to bring bread. He's going to give a weary man bread. Somebody who's in need, he's going to say, let me feed you. And Sodom is the symbol in the Nevi'im of people who have bread and won't give it. Melchizedek, whose name is Tzedek, could be a very good contrast to a king who represents the absence of mishpat. And beyond that, this king actually has a name. What is his name? It's not on the page, but he is introduced at the beginning of the perek. He has a fantastic name. His name is Bera. Okay, so we have king of justice and king in evil. These are the names. There I think are strong hints in this text that Or HaChaim's contention is there is support for this, that we are to contrast these two kings. However, I think this isn't sufficient if we want to understand what's going on in the story in general, because we don't care about these characters. What do we care about these two kings? Okay, so this one is better than that one. But what does it have to do with the character that we are really focused on, that we've been following for all these chapters and we're going to continue to follow, and that is Avraham. What does this have to say about Avraham? Okay, so that's what I want to get to something a little bit deeper in our understanding of this. And my suggestion is the following: that Melchizedek is coming at this pivotal moment where Avraham has been in this downward spiral for a very long time, and this is I think arguably the lowest point that he has reached, where the king of Sodom is coming out now not to fight with him, but to embrace him and to say, let's continue our work together. And I picture him standing there saying, oh, this is bad. This is as bad as it's ever been. And now, if you'll help me here to just think cinematically for a moment, I would like to suggest that there is a director backstage who is saying, freeze, right? We've got Avraham here saying, ooh, the king of Sodom is coming out, right? We've got the king of Sodom coming out, ready to shake his hand and pat him on the back, and we've got freeze, okay? And then Melchizedek opens his mouth and speaks. And I would suggest that Avraham is frozen, but there's one part of him that's working, and that is his ears. He can hear the little speech that Melchizedek is going to give. And let's look now carefully at the speech. Let's go back to it. What is it that this mysterious Kohen is saying to Avraham? The first word that comes out of his mouth is what? What?
Baruch.
Baruch. Okay, this wonderful root that we came to appreciate at the very beginning of Abraham's journey, where God says to him, you are blessed, 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 blessed. And then the reality of Abraham's life was, where's the blessing? I don't see it. And here comes Melchizedek at this moment where bracha is the hardest to see, and he says, let me remind you, you are in fact blessed. You are on that track. Sometimes it's difficult to see it, but it's still there. It's still waiting for you. And so we have this word now taking over. Our milah mancha comes back. Vayivarechehu, vayomar baruch. And then again in Pasuk Kav, uvaruch, bless, bless, bless. Okay, that's the first message, I would say, that this Kohen presents. The second word that I think is very significant here is that he gives a new name to God. All of a sudden, he's calling God El Elyon. Okay, now we're used to this, and we don't realize when we read it here how unusual it is, but because we say it every day in our tefillot. But we got it from Melchizedek. Right? El Elyon koneh shamayim va'aretz. This is where it comes from. El Elyon, again, I would argue that this is a reminder to Avraham of this upward gaze. God is the world. The promise is still waiting for you. There, even though your gaze has been kind of forcibly directed downward, your future, your destiny is still something that is very lofty. Let me remind you. Yes, sir.
When you say Melchizedek is a Kohen of what?
Good question. All we're told here is a Kohen le'el elyon. That's it. We don't know. He doesn't. He's out of context completely. He comes here. This is all we know about him. This is all the information we have. You tell me. Let's see the Kohen of. That's all we get. That's all we get. Okay. What I'm trying to argue here is he's here for a very specific function, and that's why that's all we get. He's here because Abraham needs him. And we need to hear the message that he's delivering to Abraham. That's how I understand this. So he's telling him he's blessed. He's telling him that God is most high. He talks about the yad, right? He says, Asher migen sarecha biyadecha. God is strengthening your hand by delivering your enemies. He gives him, and here again, I would get to, Stephanie, I would get back to your question. Maaser, I think, all right, I'm going to print. I can't do this. He is giving him Maaser. I think he is the one who is giving Abraham everything that he needs. He's feeding him, right? He's giving him food. He's giving him material goods. And I think this is especially significant given the fact that the last time Abraham was in a dubious situation with an evil king who was offering him a lot of material goods, he took the material goods. Now we have a king. We have a king who is, right, threatening him with material goods, threatening his moral center with these material goods. And here we have this Melchizedek who's going to preempt that by saying, let me give you maaser. Let me give you stuff. Melchizedek, I think more than anything, by his very essence, is delivering a message, the most important message to Abraham. Melchizedek. This is an act of tzedek, of feeding the weary person. And tzedek is going to lie at the core of Abraham's calling. And here I want to call your attention to source. It doesn't have a number, but it's on page 2 of your sources, Genesis 18, toward the bottom of the page, where we are told the reason, belatedly, 6 chapters after God speaks to Abraham one fine day, we are told why God did that. If I asked you just out of the blue, why did God choose Abraham, what would you say? Why him of all people? Fiery furnace, anybody? What? Say again? Yes. Okay, we're never told at the moment of Lech Lecha that God says, I'm choosing you because you're righteous, because you are courageous, because you're good looking. And we don't have any reason. We have to wait 6 chapters until God says, just before God is about to destroy Sodom, Ki yida'ativ, why did I single him out? God says, L'ma'an asher yitzaveh banav et beito acharav. What's lema'an? It's a very important word here. Lema'an. In order to. Okay, if you wanted to say that God chose Abraham because of something, what would that Hebrew word be? Because of something that he's already done? Biglal. Because of something. But it's not biglal, it's lema'an. Biglal is past-oriented. Lema'an is future-oriented. I didn't choose him because he excelled in any way. I didn't choose him because he distinguished himself. I chose him because I have a job for him to do. It is lema'an asher yitzaveh, in the future. I see perhaps in him some sort of a potential, but I'm calling upon him to take upon himself a heavy responsibility. Lema'an asher, that's I think the first remarkable thing about this. God chose Abraham not because of, but in order to. And in addition to that, the essence of the calling, the essence of the job is these 2 words. V'shamru derech Hashem lasot tzedakah u'mishpat. You know, this is remarkable. I'm looking here and I'm saying this is the essence of the calling. Where does it say anything here about eating glatt kosher food? Right? Tzedakah u'mishpat. If you're going to pare it down to its absolute essence, that's what it's all about. Doing tzedakah u'mishpat. Okay, and so here we have Abraham at this moment where tzedakah and mishpat are very hard to see. This thing that he's going to have to develop and hold on to and pass along to the future generations so that they can create a religion around it. And here is a person who embodies tzedek, who is named tzedek, who appears at this moment and gives and delivers these messages. After Melchizedek speaks, did you want to say something? After Melchizedek speaks, the director says, okay, everybody, unfreeze. And now we pick up the action. Let's go back to Genesis 14. Yes, question? Whoops. The king of Sodom is unfrozen. And now, as if, right, we weren't rudely interrupted in verse 21, Vayomer melech Sodom el Avram. The first word that comes out of his mouth is not beracha, but rather 10. Give me. Melchizedek gives, and the king of Sodom demands to be given. 10, but what does he want? 10 li hanefesh v'harechush kach lach. Now, the simple meaning, the plain meaning of this is clearly What's tenli hanefesh?
The captives.
Give me the prisoners, right? Give me back my prisoners. V'arachush kachlach. You take all the possessions. Okay, now here we have another evil king who is offering Abraham possessions. Okay, here I'm going to say something now that is by no means the plain pshat of this pasuk, but I think it's an intriguing secondary reading of it. I think what we're getting here is a kind of Faustian offer that's being made by this king. Ten li hanefesh v'harachush kachlach. Take the possessions, I'll take your soul. Your soul will be mine. I will own you. Okay, and I think that's why, again, this is the moment where Abraham has to stand up and decide which way he's going. Is he going to fall into the trap again, or is he going to be able to fight back, to push back against these kinds of challenges and respond? And I would argue that this vocabulary, this new lexicon, has penetrated Abraham's consciousness because he is now going to respond to the king of Sodom, invoking this very language. Let's look now. In verse 22, Vayomer Avram el melech Sodom. Harimoti yadi. The first thing he talks about is the hand, right? Melchizedek says to him, your hand has been strengthened by God. And Abraham now is going to echo that sentiment and say, yes, my hand is strong enough, and I'm going to hold up that hand to God. Who is God? El Elyon. He's using Melchizedek's name for God here, right? He's never done that before. Konei shamayim ba'aretz. And then he says, Im michut v'ad tzrochna libemekach mikol asher lach. I'm taking nothing from you. Okay, how different is this than the way he behaved in Mitzrayim? This time he says, I don't want any part of it. And then he says, V'lo tomar ani he'esharti et Avram. And I believe that the he'esharti is playing off of the ma'aser, these same three root letters. They are different words, but I think there's a word play that is very intentional here between the ma'aser that he gets. He's basically saying, I have everything I need. I have been built up by Melchizedek in every way that I needed to be built up, including materially, so I don't have to take largesse from the likes of you. I can now rebuff your advances, walk away clean, and move on back to the beracha that is my destiny. I'm pausing now. Questions, comments? I have said a lot of things. Yes?
Maybe part of the destiny with the nefesh and the refuge is when Abraham left in the Lech Lecha, he took it hanefesh asher lachashu.
Yes, yeah.
So that could play as part of supporting that Abraham all along was following a certain ideology.
Very nice.
That was at this point in a difficult position.
Thank you. I would like to suggest that Melchizedek's influence continues on into the next chapter. Chapter 14 of Bereshit is followed by, guess what? Who said chapter 15? Yes, chapter 15. Okay, and in chapter 15, and I don't want to take a lot of time here developing this. Okay, this gentleman sitting next to me said, are you waving that book again? Yeah, I kind of am. I'm sorry, but it saves me time to say, I can't go into all this now, but it is in here where I develop a full comparison of chapters 14 and 15, two chapters that you would think have nothing in common. Chapter 14 is all about this kind of grimy war for survival that Abraham engages in. And chapter 15 is what? What's in chapter 15 of Bereshit? The Brit Bein HaBetarim, right? This grand celestial vision where God says, look up and see if you can count the stars. That's how numerous your descendants are going to be. Right? This is all about relationship between Abraham and God. And the chapters are connected by the opening, and here it's on your page. Oh no, it's not. It begins with the words. Oh, I see something went a little weird with this. It starts with the words Achar hadevarim ha'eleh. Chapter 15 begins with the words Achar hadevarim ha'eleh, which Rashi and many others believe is the equivalent of an arrow saying these two chapters belong together. And in fact, when we look at the two chapters and we line up some of the vocabulary, it is quite remarkable how many words they have in common, and not your average words. They have words, just to impress you, dan, rechush, Emim, Rifaim, Goyim, Damesek. I can keep going. You want me to? All those words are in both of those chapters. But what for our purposes are the Melchizedek references, where God opens this story, where he's basically reassuring Abraham that everything is going to be fine, that he's going to get back on track. Here we are in Genesis 14, at the bottom of page 2. And I apologize if the words got a little put out of order here. Just ignore the first 3 words. Vayotze oto achutza. Achar ha'devarim ha'eleh, haya devar Hashem el Avram b'machazeh lemor, al tira Avram anochi magen lach. Don't be afraid. Right? You have been involved in this mess up until now. But anochi magen lach, I've got your back. I'm a shield to you. And this word magen, I believe, draws on, what did we see back in chapter 14? Hashem migen sarecha beyadecha. God who delivered Abraham's enemies into his hands. God now says, I'm going to elevate that to a magen, to a kind of iron dome that's going to protect you from all evil. God, vayotze oto hachutza, he brings him outside. And here, Rashi is puzzled by this. What do you mean he took him outside? Was he inside? What does it mean to take him outside? And here, he brings on the top of the next page of page 3, on the words vayotze oto hachutza, I think Rashi really sums up the situation with the following words. Hotzio mechalalo shel olam. He brought him out from the earth's hollow spaces. V'higbiho lemala min hakochavim. He raised him up above the stars. I think this is just a beautiful metaphor for everything that we've been looking at here, where Abraham has been falling into the earth's hollow spaces, and now God says, I'm pulling you out of that. And Abraham has now been open to understanding that he can move beyond all the difficult places that he's been, and he can go back toward reaching for those stars. In this chapter, very significantly, the Brit Bein HaBetarim is a microcosm of Matan Torah. We have all of the same physical surroundings, the darkness, the gloom, the dread, and then in a not at all subtle fashion, God says to him, Ani Hashem asher hotzeiticha, from where? Me'ur kasdi. I am the Lord who took you out. Right? This is clearly a foreshadowing. Abraham, the symbolic leader of a nation that hasn't been born yet, has a symbolic revelation. He meets God. And I would argue that it's Melchizedek who reaches him at this critical moment, who infuses him with the principles that have animated him from the very beginning, right? Brings him back to this lech lecha motion that is inward and upward, allows him to meet God, and then in a symbolic way receive the Torah, whose essence is tzedakah u'mishpat. Ad kan, story number 1. Okay, my question, oh my God, it's 10:25. Okay, this one we're going to do much faster. Story number 2. Let's go. Exodus 2. Do you have koach, or do you want to just stop with one? You guys look like you're falling apart. You want to get up and exercise? If we were at Pardes, we would.
7th inning stretch.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If Abraham's challenge is to rediscover his inward motion, I would argue that Moshe's struggle is the opposite. He is born in this gap between cultures. He's got 2 mothers but no people. 2 people but no people. Where does he belong? Who are his people? His existence is intensely internal, and his challenge, because he's going to have to lead an actual nation, is to begin to reach outward toward others, to get outside of himself, to embrace others, to include others, and to begin the difficult task of nation building. And when we first pick up our study is going to be on the page, Exodus 2, where he goes out to meet the people. He's looking for, I would argue here, for his community of like-minded people. Where do I belong? Vayhi bayamim hahem, vayigdal Moshe vayetze elecha vayar besivlotam. Vayar ish mitzri makeh ish ivri ne'echa. He sees, and here, if we're getting to our milah mancha in this story, it's going to be a tiny little 3-letter word. The word is ish. It is going to appear 9 times in this one chapter. And my question to you is, what is the significance of this tiny little word? What does it mean? The first ish that he sees is an Egyptian ish. And if we have to characterize the Egyptian ish based on what Moshe has seen, what do we know about the Egyptian ish? Evil, tyrannical, right? Abusing the weak. Makeh ish ivri me'echad. And now, vayifen ko vacho vayar ki ein ish. He looks this way and that, and he sees that there's no man. What does that mean? What does it mean on a plain level? What? Oops, thank you. There's no witness. The coast is clear. Now, if that's what it means, he didn't do a very good job. How do we know? Because they see him. So I think the better interpretation is the interpretation of the Ha'amek Davar, which is here on your page in English. He turned this way and that. He sought avenues to complain about the Egyptian who struck for no reason. She saw there was no man to whom to report the iniquity, because they were an assembly of traitors and haters of Israel. In a place where there is no man, he strove to be a man. What is he paraphrasing? Pirkei Avot, bimkom she'ein ish. What is an ish here? How would we translate this? Into Yiddish? A mensch. There is no mensch in this entire society. It is so infused with evil. Moshe is running around to the police, to the courts. They're killing Jews in the streets here. Who's going to do something? Vayar ki ein ish. And this is going to be the problem that's going to plague Moshe throughout his career. Vayar ki ein ish. There's nobody here but me. This is reinforcing this internal gaze, where he says, if ein ish, I have to step up and do it. This vigilante action where he takes the law into his own hands and kills this Egyptian. The next day he goes out and he looks at the Hebrews, and what does he see there? Shnei anashim ivrim nitzim. If we have to characterize the Hebrews now, what do we know about them? 2 Hebrews. What's nitzim? Fighting with each other. What are they doing? Right, this is classic, right? Psychology. They're emulating their oppressors. They're getting beaten, and now they're beating each other. And Moshe gets involved this time. He says, "Lama takere echa." Stop that. And they turn to him, and what can only be described as chutzpah. They say to him, "Mi samcha leish sar v'shofet." Who made you the big bad ish? They're mocking him. He thinks of himself as an ish, as an upstanding person of integrity, of courage. He's going to stand up for what's right. He tries to get others to do it, and they mock him for his efforts. And he realizes that there is no one here for him, not in either society. He runs away. He goes to Midian, and you would think that he may have learned something from his terrible experiences. But instead, the first thing he does is to get involved in a struggle between a bunch of shepherds and some Midianite young women, and he saves them. They go running home to their father. Finally, Kohen number 2, who is it? Yitro, or as he's called here, right? Ru'el, we won't get into that. And they say to him, he says, "Why are you home so early today, girls?" Vatomana ish mitzri hitzilanu. And everybody makes a big deal out of the fact that they call him a Mitzri. I think what's more interesting is that they call him an Ish. Right, there's this great upstanding man who helped us. And Yitro says, whoa, well, where is he? Lama ze azavten et ha'ish. If there's such a great Ish out there, why'd you leave him there? Call him v'yochalach. Well, you're laughing. Shidduch material. Yes? Okay. Bring him home, yeah. But significantly, what does Yitro want to do? He wants to feed him lechem. Okay, now we're starting to get a little Malki Tzedek-esque in this story, where we have another Kohen who comes from somewhere else. And he says, I need to feed you. In addition to feeding him bread, he's going to feed him what he needs, which is some kind of community. Because the chapter ends with the words, Vayoel Moshe lashevet et ha'ish. Right? He sits with him, he stays with him. He says, you are a person who's desperately seeking community. I am an ish, just as you are an ish, I will be your community. Stay here. And Moshe stays. And he says here, and by the way, here's a daughter, take my daughter. Right? He's expanding Moshe's solitary life by helping him create a family. They have a child, and I think it's very significant that at the end of the chapter, he calls the child Gershom, Ki amar ger hayiti be'eretz nochriya. And when you think about it, this is a crazy statement. He's in the far reaches of Midian, and there he says, oh, ger hayiti. Back there in Mitzrayim, the land of my many mothers, and right? There I was a stranger, right? The implication is now I'm not. Now I'm home. Because he's found people who share his value system. This is where Moshe is most comfortable. And I wanted to suggest that what happens, Yitro is going to play this role in Moshe's life throughout his story, and Moshe is going to be on the verge of recidivism throughout his story. He's always going to go back to a kind of tendency to do things on his own. And here we pick up the action the next time the two of them meet in chapter 18 in the book of Shemot, at the bottom of your page, where they meet again. And here the Melchizedek references are going to come faster and more furious. Right? Here Yitro sees him. This is after the sea has been split, the people have been saved, and he says to him, he's very excited about God who saved them. Miyad Mitzrayim. He says, Baruch Hashem asher hitzil etchem. Miyad Mitzrayim. Miyad Paro. Right, the hand, the blessing, the lechem. It's all there. And now he's going to diagnose Moshe's problem. Madua, 3 lines in. Madua ata yoshev levadecha. Look, he looks at, he takes in the scene, and the scene is that Moshe is sitting in judgment from morning until night. Any Israelite who has any problem, whether it goes to the Supreme Court or the small claims court, they go directly to Moshe. So he is right, losing he has no time for himself, and as Yitro says to him, Navol Tibol, thou shalt surely burn out. You can't do this. Madua ta yoshev levadecha lo tov hadavar asher ata oseh. Significantly, these terms that are drawn together, they appear in only one other place in Tanakh. Lo tov levad. Right? This eternal human truth that God says back in the Garden of Eden, Lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. That is true for everyone, including Moshe, says Yitro. Lo tov levad. You can't do it alone. You think you can. You've done it before, but this is not leadership. This is not embracing a nation in a way that will be functional. He says to him, it's not good for you, and significantly, and it's not good for the nation. It's not good for anyone. Okay, I imagine, I just met all of you, but I imagine there are some of you here who are in leadership roles in some realm of your lives, and you have come up against this eternal conundrum, right? The leader who says there's nobody here but me, or there's nobody here as good as me, right? I have to do everything, and then the burnout that follows, and it isn't good leadership. And that's what Yitro is saying to him. If you want to be a leader, if you want to let these people be led in the way that they need to be led, you have to begin to include them. And the recipe is going to be, you have to appoint, V'ata techezeh mikol ha'am, anshe chayil yirei Elohim, anshe emet, etc. V'samta aleihem sarei alafim, sarei meot, v'shaftu et ha'am b'chol eit. And I've underlined these words because anashim, who are going to be sarim, men, officers, judges. What does this remind us of? And feel free to look at this board over here. The taunt of the Egyptian, who said to Moshe, Mi zamcha leish sar v'shafet? Who made you all this? You're not. And here is Yitro saying you can reverse that mockery and actually rise to the level of your potential. You can be that leader if you learn how to step outside of yourself and embrace the nation around you and build from within. Okay, that is the message of Yitro. I would argue that Moshe is going to come up against this over and over again. Ultimately, I think, and this is, we won't go here, but I think he's going to end, there's a kind of ring composition to his whole career, where he begins with this solitary action out of a great sense of frustration and loneliness, Vayach et HaMitzri, and how is he going to end his career? Vayach et HaSelah. right? And it's right after Yitro leaves. And he begs him to stay. I think he becomes dependent on Yitro and can't actually step up and do the things that Yitro has instructed after Yitro leaves him, but that's a discussion for another time. I promised you an act of undermining, and I always deliver on my promises. And so here I am going to ask you, before we look at the final source on your page, I want to say, first of all, we have two stories of mysterious outsider Kohanim who provide moral and physical sustenance at a critical moment, and they help the patriarchs come closer, rediscover, reconnect to tzedakah u'mishpat. The story of Abraham is more about tzedakah, and the story of Moshe is about mishpat. So together we've got tzedakah u'mishpat. Significantly, after Abraham has his encounter with his Kohen, he then goes directly to his encounter with God at the Brit Bein HaBetarim. Moshe, after his encounter with Yitro, with his Kohen, in chapter 18 in the book of Shemot, what happens after that? Chapter 19, Matan Torah. He's ready now to receive the Torah, again, whose basis, as God has instructed, is tzedakah u'mishpat. Once he is able to internalize, to embrace what mishpat really entails, he's ready to lead the people to the receiving of the Torah. Right, so we've got these two models, and I think as Yosef said, right, to Paro, if something happens twice, it means it's really true, right? Paro has the same dream twice. Here we have the same story twice. I think this model we are meant to take this seriously. There is one story, one additional story, where there is a Kohen, but it's not just a Kohen. Like Melchizedek, this is a Kohen that is also a Melech. There is one other figure, don't look, this is a trick question, who is both a Melech and a Kohen. Who is it? For the money.
Ahimelech.
What?
Ahimelech with David giving him a sword.
Not a Kohen.
Who's going Gadol?
Oh, this guy's gonna know. Yeah.
Someone from the Maccabees.
Okay, but I'm looking biblically. Got anybody in the Bible? How about if we look at the last page of our sources, Exodus 19. And I did warn you this was a trick question. I know, group grown. Okay. Ve'ata im shamoa tishmu b'kol diushbatem v'koritim v'item li segula mikol ha'amim ki li kol ha'aretz ve'atem tihiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. Who is the Melech and the Kohen in this scenario? We are, right? Bnei Yisrael at the foot of Har Sinai. God says to the people, you guys are now ever after going to be the Kohanim. And everybody wants to know, you know the old joke about the Kohen and the person who wants to buy his way into the Kahuna, right? You can't do it. You have to be born into it. How can we all be Kohanim? How can that be? And here, Ibn Ezra and Sepharno essentially say the same thing. A Kohen is a servant, is a religious, moral servant. The meaning of kingdom of priests is that through you my kingship will be recognized when you act as my servants. And Sepharno takes beyond that, even though the entire race is dear to me, you will be treasured above them all, and the difference between you more or less is that you will understand and teach the entire human race to call in God's name and to serve him as one. What is this reminiscent of? Abraham, Lima'an. This is Lima'an. I am choosing you now, the whole people, not because of something that you have done to distinguish yourselves, but in order that you take upon yourselves this future-oriented weight of responsibility to be the purveyors of tzedakah to the world. But if you look at this in light of the two stories that we saw, we see a kind of reversal of the model. Where in the two stories that we saw, we've got I really hate air quotes, but I can't help it, the Jewish patriarch who is in trouble, and the non-Jew who is able to see clearly and to instruct how to go forward and get over the hurdle. That happens twice. And now God says at Har Sinai, it's time to return the favor. You now are going to be those Kohanim. You are going to be the people on the outside, on the margins, who don't belong, but you're going to be able to see things that the people in the story can't see. You are going to provide that guidance and help the world get closer to tzedakah u'mishpat. Right? It's basically taking the story and saying it's time now to reverse it. And here now, there is a reason that I brought this book, not just to wave it, but to end, because it helps me end. I would end with this. I would end with this. First of all, I would quote a midrash, Eliyahu Rabbah, reacting to the surprising choice of Deborah as God's judge, prophet, and military leader. The midrash has this to say. No, this is not another feminist class, so don't worry. I call upon heaven and earth to bear witness that whether Jew or Gentile, whether man or woman, whether manservant or maidservant, the divine spirit rests upon one in accordance with the deeds that one performs. Okay, that sounds pretty simple. Back to me. In the end, the combined stories of biblical priests challenge both Israelites and non-Israelites to learn from the many possible sources of wisdom and morality in the world. In addition, they challenge readers to seek guidance where it is most needed. At times, assistance is needed in focusing inward and upward from the mundane realities of the earth's hollow spaces back toward the lofty ideals that dwell among the stars. Although this reorientation may come at the cost of isolation and loneliness, it is often necessary for inspiration and for clarity of purpose. At other times, help is needed in venturing out of solitude and engaging with the world. While such outward engagement may involve compromise, it also brings ideals down to earth where they may form the basis of just and righteous communities. And I wanted to read this because I wanted to end with just and righteous communities. I want to thank you for introducing me to a just and righteous community. It has been my great privilege to be here with you over this Shabbat, and I will end with tzedakah u'mishpat and Shavua Tov.